The agenda this week parsed the picture your online life is painting of you, turned the page on the future of Canadian magazines, and searched for solutions from social finance. The agenda's week begins with the rising north. Francis, where do you see the greatest potential for economic development in the north?
There's no short answer to that question. I think what we need for the north is a development plan that takes into account how people want to live now. People don't want to leave the communities they're in. They want to continue to harvest. They would like to, overwhelmingly, they would like to be able to live in the north and make their lives there. There is no one industry that can solve that problem. There can be a contribution from mining, both in terms of taxable tax source, can be a source of taxes for governments, can be a source of a certain number of jobs. It's not sufficient to satisfy the needs of the population for waged work. We need to think about diversification and about post-secondary education, because until there's an Arctic university, and a university in northern Canada, it will be difficult for northerners to get the education they need to have a modern economy.
Is anybody pitching that right now? I mean, it's seriously pitching a University of the North somewhere. Madeline, why don't you take that one on?
There are quite a number of us who recognize the value and the need for our Northern University. Ideally, we would like it to be in Iqaluit and Nunavut. Canada is the only country, Arctic country, without a university. We see how beneficial it's been for Greenland, for Alaska, for Russia to have that. It not only contributes to research, but also the business and industry sector benefits from having educated population, but also research that benefits their industries. And it also enables our people, our children, to see that post-secondary education is accessible. I received my law degree in Iqaluit. I didn't have to leave my community. I was able to participate in the economic and political development, and there's a lot of pluses. I'm surprised, and I think it's an embarrassment that Canada does not have a university in its Arctic.
In its Arctic. You're from where originally, Anya?
I'm from Denmark.
Would you consider yourself an Arctic country back in Denmark?
Absolutely. I'm from the Kingdom of Denmark.
You're from the Kingdom of Denmark. Obviously, there are universities in Denmark. Can you imagine, or maybe give us a sense about what we're missing out on by not having post-secondary institutions in the north of Canada?
We have a university in Nuuk. Nuuk is the capital of Greenland. And that university is well attended. It's got instructors from Greenland as well as from Denmark. We have a huge cohort of Greenlanders that go to the university in Nuuk, and they're coming in from the different communities along the west coast. There are subsidy programs, of course, as we have within the Danish welfare state, to support young people going to university in Nuuk. So we are beginning to see a well-educated Greenlandic workforce that will either stay in Greenland or make their mark on the international scene, and in turn they'll bring economic opportunities and development back to Greenland. Education, and definitely post-secondary education, is in everybody's interest.
Let me talk about those economic opportunities a bit with Bernie. We talked about a second ago the need for a more diversified northern economy. For example, do you see the biggest potential? Would it be in resource extraction? Would it be in shipping? Would it be in tourism? Given the climate changing, where do you see it happening?
It's an excellent question, but as Fran said, it's variable. It depends on what perspective you're asking from. If you're asking what's the best potential for jobs for people who live in the north, then the answer would be slightly different than what are the biggest potential developments for a resource company from the south, for example. A lot has been invested in mining. Shipping is going to be a great enabler, but as Fran also pointed out, there is an infrastructure deficit. So big tourist ships, for example, they cannot go through many parts of the Arctic. We don't have the charts, we don't have the nav aids, and we don't have the ports for them. Currently, I think government is probably the biggest employer of people in the three territories. There are some
Which, the local governments or the government of Canada?
No, sorry, they would be the territorial and local governments, okay. Yeah. But there are some warning signs on the horizon. For example, the land claim agreements were founded on a notion that the caribou would be around for a long time. And we've had, perhaps again tied to climate change, a very radical drop in the caribou populations. That has an economic impact on local people because of the replacement income generated by hunting caribou. So there are those factors. Education, universities may not be the best way to go in some of the territories simply because the graduation level out of high school isn't sufficiently large. Those universities would probably be populated from people from the south for the most part. And the territorial governments have been looking at these. The Yukon is, I think, more encouraged about a campus there. The Northwest Territories is more hesitant, and I'm not sure what the current position in Nunavut would be on that.
Feeding my family is about raising awareness about high cost of food in Nunavut. And not just that, raising awareness that we pay extremely high food prices for some of the outdated food as well. That happens a lot in the communities. So we're constantly promoting high cost of food in Nunavut.
You say it's about raising awareness. Whose awareness are you trying to raise?
Our MPs in the Parliament, Canadians, people from across the world, any of the public out there.
You think people don't know that it costs more to live and to eat in the north?
Not really. It's hard. A lot of people don't understand the structures in Nunavut, how hard it is to get food up here. And a lot of people, we get a lot of responses from the south saying, why is this happening in Canada? So there's not that much awareness actually outside of the north.
Understood. Okay, we're going to roll a clip right now from this Polar Sea documentary, 10-part series that we're rolling out over the next little piece of time on TVO, and then we'll come back and chat right after that. Here's the clip. Roll tape, please.
Grocery delivery by jet plane makes food more expensive here than anywhere in Canada. And 45% of people in Pond are on social assistance. A Nunavut government report says half of youths aged 11 to 15 sometimes go to bed hungry. And lots of the food kids do get is not the best for them.
Now that takes place in Pond Inlet, which is even more remote than where you are right now, but essentially the numbers, the story that's trying to tell, that all ring true to you?
Yeah, very much. It's a couple of three main things is that happens a lot on all the communities in Nunavut, not just Pond Inlet. As well, it talked about the eating habits. I want to kind of clarify that the Inuit have always traditionally hunted our wildlife. So it's the fruit and salads we're not used to eating. It's only within the last 50 years. So that's relatively new to our diet. So a lot of the Inuit, some of the Inuit don't know how to cook with what's available in the stores. So they revert to something that's easy to cook as well.
I'm going to follow up on the diet nature of the questions in a bit, but if this is too personal, you just tell me to mind my own business, okay? I want to ask you how much I want to ask you what your weekly grocery bill is.
Right now there's only 3 of us. It's about $400 to $500 a week.
You are kidding.
No, it's just, really, it's like that. It's not just food, and cleaning supplies are expensive. Everything else, plus the internet, the phone bill, high cost of living is in the north.
Do you think you're being gouged?
Oh yeah, for sure. When, like in Iqaluit, we have several stores, and for like a Tim Hortons big cup, when there's like $3 difference between the stores, then you know something's not working.
Okay, but I mean, it makes sense on the face of it that things would cost more in Iqaluit because obviously the transportation to get products up there would be more significant than to go from factory to downtown Toronto, obviously. So that explains some of the price differential, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be expensive in the north, but when people have to buy like a $10, $11 for 1 can frozen Minute Maid concentrated juice, then you start to think, what's wrong with that picture? Where like for 28 bucks for a head of cabbage, it's not that big and that heavy to send to the north. So when we're looking at those, there's gouging.
Again, you're serious. $28 for a head of cabbage?
Yeah, in Arctic Bay, which is not far from Palm Inlet.
And Kickstarter is what's called a crowdfunding site. So a lot of people now know how crowdfunding works, but basically you're a creator or a maker and you need capital for a project. So, you know, say you want to mount a play and you don't want to go the traditional route, but you need $15,000, so you pre-sell tickets and, you know, and you offer people gratitude in exchange for, you know, pre-purchasing their ticket for the show 6 months out.
And I gather there's a culture for this thing, so you have a sense of how much to ask for, what's appropriate, what's not?
Yeah, and it's also, Kickstarter and crowdfunding is broadly misunderstood by a lot of people. I think a lot of people see it as a charity pot. And it's really not. It's kind of it's a site for raising capital for creative projects. So, you
Which
know,
has been going on from time immemorial.
Which has always been
That's
happening. So, you know, I didn't make $1 million on Kickstarter. I sold $1 million, you know, worth of CDs, but then I had to manufacture everything and run a business.
I was going to say, if you want to qualify that, that makes sense. Because yes, you brought in $1 million,
right,
but that doesn't go into your pocket. You now
no, none of it went into my pocket. It went right back into the business.
It goes into business because you got to press discs, you got to pay people who
make
do
books,
various things.
Fly around, you know, deliver. I did 35 house parties around the world, South Africa, Israel, Australia. So all that stuff costs money to deliver. And in some cases, you know, I lost money on some of the packages. So it was kind of a break-even deal.
Now that's unusual, you'd have to admit, right? I mean, $1 million coming in from a campaign is unusual. What does it typically fetch?
It really depends. I mean, I've seen successful crowdfunding projects from bands or theaters or tech, you know, people making tech gadgets, and all they need is $500 or $5,000. And a really big part of understanding crowdfunding and how it works is knowing who's out there to help you, understanding how much your community is going to be able to do for you.
Do you put out the ask for $100 grand, I think, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you hoped for, and then you got this return that was sort of more than 10 times better than what you hoped for.
Well,
why did it do so well?
It wasn't that I was hoping for $100 grand. That was the minimum floor. So one of the things about Kickstarter is you have to set a minimum bar, and if your backers don't meet that amount, which in my case was $100,000, then you don't get any funding at all.
Everybody
it's kind
gets
of a
their money
way.
back.
Yeah, no one gets charged. So everyone sort of lays down their credit card and it gets charged at the end of the campaign if you reach your goal. And so it's always in the artist's best interest to put an absolute minimum conservative amount of money. And I know my fan base pretty well. And I knew we would make $100 grand and I hoped we would make a lot more.
Why do you think you got more than 10 times more than what you sought?
Because I think it was also really infectious. It was sort of like the golden dawn of Kickstarter. Everyone was really excited. My story, even before Kickstarter, at least in the music industry, had been highly publicized because I really wanted to get off my record label because they were doing a terrible job. And I fought legally tooth and nail to get off my record label. And when I finally did, it was a big community celebration. And instead of going and signing with another label, I looked at the people who had helped me and who had been following my story, and I said, I'm asking you guys. So there was a real emotional component to people wanting to help.
Well, that's what's interesting, because I get why it would be important for you and your career to get away from the label that you didn't think was adequately representing you. But why would your fans have cared so much about that they would be prepared to help fund that?
I think because if you look at my relationship with my fan base, which has been going on for 10 plus, 12, 13 years. And I've been a constantly touring musician, doing 200-300 shows a year in cities all over the world. And the main stage is the music, right? And the art and the songs, which are really emotional and people really connect to. And that's number one. But also with my band, the Dresden Dolls, and now also solo, and even on this book signing tour that I'm on, every night I meet everybody. And so I know tens of thousands of people.
Tell me what kind of data people share about themselves on your site.
A dating site is a peculiar thing because, the end goal is to meet someone in person. Whereas like on Twitter or something, your end goal is to exchange messages through the service. And you're doing it with real people mostly. But it's still very self-contained. And same on Facebook, you're friends with your cousins and your coworkers or whatever, but it's all mediated through Facebook. Whereas on a dating site, we do the mediation and then you go and meet them in person and have a coffee or a beer. And so that's led people to contribute a lot of very personal stuff. You know, age is important in dating, which it is not important on Twitter, for example, or your race, we have found is very important when people give that to us. How tall you are, all this kind of demographic, personal stuff that people use to make a decision about a partner. They ultimately also volunteer about themselves. One
of the things I learned from your book was a new acronym that I was not aware of. You have the market cornered on weird data. What is weird data?
Well, that's not exactly true. The weird data stands for white, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. And that acronym was originally applied to classic academic research as a weakness of that research, because typically a scholar will take what's called a convenience sample, which means the convenience part of that is you just get the people that are nearby to be part of your research, which inevitably is like grad students at college, right? So that is a weakness of a lot of past scholarship. And I think the internet data gets away from that. I mean, obviously the problem, certainly the rich part exists, like you can't have a laptop or a phone if you don't have some basic amount of money, but the pervasiveness of things like Facebook and Twitter, at least in the Western world, have allowed researchers, both people who work for companies and academics, to sort of get rid of that weird problem where, you know, 87% of the US, and I assume also of Canada, uses Facebook. That's a huge sample, way more representative than you would get if you pulled 30 co-eds from the quad and asked them some questions.
Sure. Maybe I could get you to amplify a bit on one of the conundrums that you identified in the book, which is this disconnect between what we tell ourselves what we do and what we actually do. What do you mean by that?
Right. Well, I mean, the internet is great because we can ask questions. On OkCupid, we'll ask people, you know, hey, what do you think about interracial relationships, you know, or you know, should people date? Should people be colorblind in dating, or whatever, however you want to phrase it? And you know, it's 2014, and almost nobody is going to profess to being racially biased, you know, because it's taboo. It's just not appropriate, you know, and polite kind of society for sure. But then you can go, so that's what they say, and then when there's ostensibly no one looking, no one asking them what they think, then they go do things like, you know, on a dating site we find that and this is not just on OkCupid, this is on other dating sites as well, that Black users, for example, are underappreciated by about 25%. They get 25% fewer messages, 25% fewer replies. When they write the message, they get about 25% kind of more no's. You know, the dating sites often have a rating apparatus, and so the ratings are about 25% less. And that's something that I think people do without ever being aware of it, or certainly able to acknowledge it consciously.
So the conclusion is we're more subconsciously racist than we think we are?
I think so, yes. Certainly the data that I've looked at bears that out for sure, because you can ask that same group of people, like, hey, is race important to you in a match? And people are going to be like, no, I'm an open-minded person. Again, it's 2014, you know, that like post-racial supposedly, right? And so people want to think that it's not a factor, but then you can go look and it very clearly is.
Since technological change is not going to stop, since globalization is not going to stop, the prognosis for all of what we're talking about here looks awful. Any reason to think that the future should look any better than what we seem to be leaning towards here?
In fact, I think the future won't be quite as bright as the last 20 years have been for Canada, because we started off the show by saying Canada's inequality did not grow as rapidly as in the United States. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that women have a higher labor force participation rate in Canada than in the United States. They're better educated. They're more likely to work full time. We have a lower percentage of single moms in Canada, single parents, sorry, in Canada than in the United States, about 35% there, about 23% here. And it's flattened out since the year 2001 or so in Canada, and it kept rising in the United States till about 2009 and has flattened out there. And I guess the third reason is we've used education. I mean, we often say that education's the fix for inequality.
A good public education system.
And we've got one of the highest not only a good public education system, but good rates of post-secondary attainment, whether it's college degrees or whether it's university college diplomas or university degrees. And Canada has done very well on that front. But if you take a look at the women's role and the education role, and how much of this new, the young cohort has gone into post-secondary education, and the rate of labor force participation rates of young women compared to young men in, childbearing ages, there's not a lot, there's not the same room for growth in the next 20 years that there was in the last 20 years. There isn't another 50% of women waiting in the wings to give more time into the labor market, and you're not going to get another 50%, you're not going to double again the rate of post-secondary attainment. So we've played the women can work just as hard as men card, and we've worked the card of get better educated and get a better job, and this is where we're at. Income inequality has grown, less so than in the United States, but it's grown. So what are we going to do for the next 20 years?
So the premise of the question is right. The prognosis is not good.
It's not in the sense that if you're relying on individuals to fix income inequality by getting better educated and working harder, that we're going to fix this. We're not going to fix this on an individual basis.
Well, I think that there is a material risk that income inequality pressures could build. And the reason for this is, first of all, the technical change isn't abating, and there's some massive game-changing technology that's in the pipeline. You look at the amount of robotics that can be coming down, that could be put in place. You think about the development of artificial intelligence and what that does in terms of the possibility of unlocking machines to do even more than what they're currently doing. So there is a race against the machine that's taking place that isn't going to disappear. But the pressure that I don't hear people talk about, which I actually think is a material threat in Canada, is actually what's happening in the United States. I think the rise of income inequality in the United States actually poses a massive competitive challenge to Canada, because America is willing to pay its low-income workers a lot less. It's willing to pay its high-income workers a lot more. And the Canadian economy competes directly with the United States. You know, in many respects, Canada is basically California. We have a population about the size of California. We have an economy about the size of California, but it spread across the entire width of the border with the United States, which means our economy is basically integrated along north-south lines. And so now you have a North American integrated economy where once you cross the border, America's willing to accept levels of inequality that are completely unacceptable to most Canadians. And I think it creates pressures for downward pressure on wages in Canada, because we're going to be competing, you know, on production. And if you look at unit labor costs, like what it costs us to produce in Canada versus the United States, we're seeing a widening gap there. And then at the same time, there's a competition for talent.
So we lose the talent at the top end.
And we lose the talent at the top end. And I think that this pressure is going to persist because America is willing to accept the level of inequality that they're having, and they are actually seeing it increasing. When you look at the decline of social mobility in the United States, I think there is no question that from an economic point of view, America has passed the point where income inequality is now acting as a major deterrent on growth, because you're creating you're really destroying a lot of opportunity for a lot of the American population.
It sounds like having your cake and eating it too, a world where investors can do well while still doing good. Joining us now for more on what social finance can deliver, Bill Young, founder and president of Social Capital Partners, Narinder Dhami, executive director of LEAP, the Center for Social Impact, and Tanya Sermon, founding executive director and current CEO of the Center for Social Innovation. And we are happy to have you three here with us in our makeshift studio still in Leaside. Good to have you aboard. I want to talk about social finance, social innovation, venture philanthropy, community bonds, green bonds. These are all terms that you're all well aware of, but I'm not sure everybody knows what they are. So let's go through this. And Bill, start us off. What is social? When you refer to social finance, you're talking about what?
Well, I'm talking about let's say a construct where you try and marry two things. You try and marry a financial return with a social return. And normally we think those two worlds are separate, that when you invest in a product that tries to derive a financial return, and when you do good, you give a donation to a charity or a government gives a grant. And this is a world where you blend the two, where the organizations, social finance organizations, are actually trying to generate both a financial return and a social return. The idea behind it being, you know, as a society, we need more sustainable ways to solve structural social challenges. And this notion that we give checks or the government gives checks and we solve social challenges isn't sustainable. So how do you harness market forces to do good?
Tanya, the assumption is you can't do well while doing good. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Well, absolutely not. And I think one of the things that we're learning in the field of social finance is really to go back to what are they investing in? And so we first have to understand the concept of social enterprise. So before social finance can step in, we need to understand that there's a whole new movement of nonprofits and for-profits that are making their social impact a priority. And so what they are doing is they're finding strategies and ways to use market forces to solve real problems or challenges in their communities. So this is a new type of organization. So the Center for Social Innovation itself is a social enterprise. We then would work with our finance partners to be able to use social finance to help us to capitalize our projects and initiatives that we see solving social and environmental problems.
Did I read right the other day you guys are doing so well you're moving out of your building? You need more space?
Well, yes, we are. We're a social enterprise that operates now 5 locations. And what we do is we provide collaborative workspace for now over 800 social mission organizations, both in Toronto and in New York City. At the core of our ability to do this social enterprise work, though, is as a nonprofit, we can't access venture capital to be able to capitalize our growth and expansion. So we need new tools. And so we've created new strategies, new financial tools to be able to solve those problems. In our case, we created the community bond as a way to use the power of community to capitalize our initiatives.
Hold off on that. Community bond is another thing. We're going to come back to it.
Great.
Narinder, I want to follow up with you on this, though. Notwithstanding everything you're saying, my assumption is most people are going to think, I can make X doing what you do, but I can make X times 3 if I invest in something that's not good for the environment, not good for society, not, it may have strings attached that are less felicitous, let's say, to what we do. Again, is that not the case?
No, so I think you have 2 types of people who play within this space. You have impact first investors and finance first investors. And the impact first investors, will be okay with taking a lower type of return. Because there's that social good that's created. And that in itself,
counts for something.
Yes. And that has transformative impact when you think of building in sustainability into the work that's being done. On the other side, there are individuals that can show, and microfinance is a great example, that you could do good and generate a strong financial return. So it's not one or the other, you can have both.
We have on the table here, as we suggested, a lot of magazines the old-fashioned way, the way I like to read them. However, Steve, there is a brave new world out there.
Absolutely.
And you guys are involved in it. What's Next Issue?
Next Issue is a subscription service that gives you access to about 150 of the world's best magazines for one monthly subscription price.
That you read digitally.
That's right, and it's primarily a tablet product. It's also a good experience on smartphone, but these are digital magazines, and so you pay $10 a month, and you can get all the monthlies. If you upgrade to the premium package, which is $15 a month, you can get all the monthlies and all the weeklies. And like I said, there's about 150 on there. You can download as many as you like, and every week as new magazines are published, that database of content just grows and grows and grows.
No limit on how many pieces you can read or download or whatever.
Absolutely. It's all you can eat.
And it's all you can eat. Okay. And presumably you've made arrangements with, unlike other aggregators who just steal the stuff and put it there, you have a business arrangement with these companies to allow you to do this.
It's actually a partnership of the 5 biggest magazine publishers in North America. So it's a partnership between ourselves, Rogers Publishing, and Time Inc., Hearst, Meredith, and Condé Nast, and Colbert Crevis and Roberts, KKR, the private equity firm, just bought into Next Issue last week. It's based out of Silicon Valley, but Rogers is an equity partner, and we are the exclusive distributor in Canada.
And how's it going?
It's going great. We've seen tens of thousands of people sign on to the platform since we launched a year ago. Huge engagement. People are downloading 18 to 19 magazines per month, per user off the platform. Engagement is really high. They're spending a lot of time with the magazines. We are really excited about it. We actually believe that this is the future of magazine newsstand in Canada. We couldn't be more enthusiastic.
Sarah, what do we think about bundling magazines in this fashion?
I think only time will tell.
Yes.
The optimistic view on it is that it will engender more people to enjoy more magazines. They will, if they have an appetite for good content on the tablet, they will have an appetite for good content everywhere.
Does anybody say, I don't like reading magazines on a tablet, I only like reading, let me rephrase the question. Besides me, Is there anybody out there who says, I don't like reading magazines on a tablet, I really just want to feel it in my hands?
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Those people still exist.
Absolutely.
I'm not the only dinosaur left.
No, I think
but I'm dying. There's a dying breed, clearly.
What my sense of our readership on all the different platforms is people like their brand, and people in magazines hate to use the word brand because it makes you think that you're a toothpaste company when in fact you're producing, beautiful prose and beautiful photographs. But we are. Toronto Life has almost 50 years old now, a distinct identity, and we have a certain horizon of subjects and a cast of characters that reappear in the magazine, and we deliver information about all those people and our subjects in a multitude of platforms. And I think the same person likes our magazine on many different platforms. We of course produce, we're a monthly magazine, but we have lots of original journalism on our website, which you can only get by going to the website or by social media. And I can imagine a person, perhaps because I'm one myself, who loves reading a print publication, has magazines on the tablet, checks the Twitter feed for, of all my favorite brands to see what the columnists are saying now. Maybe they're out reporting something. A Maclean's columnist might be covering something that you can't get in the print publication, and reopening up an e-newsletter that you've opted into that will give you more information. And then of course that same person might attend an event hosted by the publication that would be, from the page to the stage, a live interaction with the people that you find most engaging in your magazine. So I don't think it's an either-or proposition.
It's all of the above.
Ideally, I think that's quite common.
Okay. Haley, how about you on this issue of bundling magazines in this way?
I'm going to agree with Sarah. I think you have to reach readers all the ways and at all the points that they want to be reading. And so I think diversity is the key. And if, anything that gets more people reading long-form journalism is exciting. So if they read a few articles of one magazine and it takes them somewhere else through something like Next Issue, I think that's wonderful.
John?
I think it's a great medium, but you have to be careful of the Netflix model. One thing we've seen with Netflix in the TV space is that it puts enormous downward pressure on the prices that content producers can charge, because if they're selling it into a bundled package, if they're in a niche, a premium niche, it makes it very difficult for the aggregator to justify adding in that component. And so I'd love to make sure that, yes, that survives, but also you have single issue sales, you preserve the identity of the individual products rather than just lumping it into a large volume sale. We're already in a world where if you're a writer and you want your stuff out there, in some cases you're writing for free, right? I mean, if you're Huffington Post, you're writing for free. If you're on the Globe and Mail website, you're writing for free. If you're a freelancer trying to submit something. Is that the way it's going? I actually just had this conversation with a freelancer earlier today, and I described how 15 years ago, when I was a freelancer, you could aspire to a middle-class lifestyle just being a freelancer for Canadian print publications.
Those days are gone.
It's very difficult now. And often you will find yourself talking to recognized media brands, and you'll be talking to someone like me who will be trying to convince you to write for sums that are just a lot lower than they were 15 years ago. And so most of the people who are doing freelancing now are combining it with other things. So they're a freelancer, but they might also have a staff job, some sort of corporate PR, or they might be doing radio, they might be doing television, they might have some sort of creative industry job, or they might be an academic, or they might be someone who's retired, or they might be a student. So gone are the days when it was seen as just any other white-collar, middle-class profession. It's now a niche thing, and the people who are doing it, they're hustling. I mean, they are hustling, they're writing for different publications. You can't just settle back on 1 or 2 gigs. You really have to be out there.
But the inexorable, I shouldn't say inexorable, the apparent conclusion one could come to, Haley, is that if we do this program in 5 or 10 years, there will not be any of these print editions on the table. There will be one iPad on the table with 150 different offerings on it.
I don't agree with you, and I'm going to use an obvious example, which is records. 20 years ago,
LPs, you mean?
Yeah, LPs.
Okay.
Nobody wanted to buy them, and then as things became more and more digital, people have an affinity for something they can hold. And I don't think you're as much of a dinosaur as you think you are. And certainly you have to be aware of all the different ways people want to access what you're putting out there. But I think that there's something about print magazines that people like, and I think they're going to be around for a long time.
To answer your next question, yes, I still have my LPs in my record player.
Glad to hear
and
it.
use it. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. What about that, Steve? Do people still, 10 years from now, want to hold these things in their hands?
Well, I think the record analogy is actually a pretty good one. And what you've seen with records is it went through from a period where that was a mainstream method of distributing content to a niche product. Now, it's a specialty product. And people often say to me, I just like the tactile experience of holding magazines in my hands. And that's great, provided people are willing to pay the true cost of delivering content that way. If that's how people want to receive it, fantastic. But I think what's going to happen with digital technology, the things that digital has going for it are convenience and flexibility and speed and mobility and all those things. Now, this is a mobile product, but it's a slow, inflexible mobile product, and it's very expensive for us to deliver. So one of the things that we have been doing, and people notice, is that we have been raising the prices on our print product as we are pushing a lot of our marketing dollars towards what we do on digital.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety. They're all on our website, theagenda.tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, and on the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.